I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everyone. I guess it's almost time to get back to school, Dr. Brown, so I think we need to have another meeting, and we'll do that. We've been meeting all summer, and we're happy to do that. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a modification to the agenda.
And if we could add a supplemental personnel report dated today to the consent agenda.
And Pat, why don't you go ahead and second that?
I second that.
And without objection, thanks, and just to try to make it clear in the minutes. And speaking of minutes, last meeting we did appoint a new board clerk for the school district, and that is Jennifer. And Jennifer is one of the few employees that we have in the district. She actually does work for the board and the administration of the district, but she does have to take an oath of office. You take an oath of office, and Jennifer Hillman has to do the same. So I'm going to ask Jennifer to take her oath, and so she can officially assume the duties of board clerk for this district.
So I just need to read it?
Indeed.
Okay. All right. I wrote it. So I, Jennifer Hillman, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of school district clerk according to the best of my ability.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. So if the minutes are missing off the website, don't ask me. Ask Jennifer. And Jennifer will be the point person for the for the board on a variety of issues, and most importantly the election, and we'll do a great job. So thanks, Jennifer. And we're going to go ahead and receiving and hearing delegations. That means people from the public get to come and talk to us and about anything they wish to. And Chris is going to read off the names because I'm a little fuzzy. So
Karen LaFace.
Hi.
Hello, Karen.
Hi. I'll just stand and talk. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. I am here as a concerned parent to discuss the Ithaca City School District athletic placement process, which is currently under consideration. The New York State Education Department has a program that permits physically and emotionally appropriate students to try out for an athletic team that is outside of the usual grade placement. Specifically today, I am referring to 7th and 8th graders who want to try out for a JV or varsity level team, and I will also speak mostly about girls because that's what I'm familiar with. I want to speak a little bit about myself. I'm a parent of 3 children in the Ithaca City School District. They are in grades 2, 6, and 8 starting this year. I am myself an athlete, and I have competed in high-level sports for many years. I'm also 5 feet 2 inches tall and 110 pounds, and this is pertinent, I believe, because of the issues that we're talking about today. I'm also a family physician, which means I am trained in both pediatrics and adult medicine. I'm not going to discuss at length the benefits of sports for kids, girls, and middle schoolers in particular, because others are going to be addressing that today. The presumed goals of the policy are to prevent athletes who are not skilled, not sufficiently mature, either emotionally or physically, to compete, to create a safe environment for all athletes, and to provide opportunities for athletes to compete at the appropriate level. The current policy that has been used up until now, and it's still the current policy because the new recommendations have yet to be approved, requires the following: parental permission. For girls, they have to be at Tanner Stage 4, which is usually around 12 to 13 years old. Average is about 12.75, which is usually 6th or 7th grade. And in the past, one of the criteria that's been used, although it's not clearly stated, is that they had to have reached menarche, which is getting their first period. They have to qualify. If they do meet those sexual maturity characteristics, then they can qualify further by passing certain skills. And last year, when my 7th grader had to do it for JV lacrosse, it was this set of skills that they had to do, and it varies depending on age, gender, and what sport they're doing. Once they qualify with sexual maturity and certain skills, then they can try out and the coach will select who will be on the team. This policy is known as the athlete placement process, and it's stated as such. This year, I saw the policy the day that my daughter had to go for the physical. And it is a comprehensive evaluation of your child's emotional and physical maturity, including height and weight, although the height and weight was not specifically stated, as well as athletic abilities, physical fitness, and sport-specific athletic skills in relationship to other student athletes at that level. The new policy recommendations that were used for this sports season, although yet they had not yet been approved, are as follows. And these are recommendations, although not requirements, from New York State Education Department. There has to be a policy in place, and I understand that, and I think all parents, I know all parents and physicians want the kids to be safe, but I do want to point out that these are not requirements. The Tanner measurements are to be used for assessing physical maturation. A physical exam of breasts and genitalia will be done by the district physician. This is, instead of Tanner 4, it's now changed to a Tanner 5. This is what the district is proposing. And this is instead of menarche, which is usually happening around Tanner 4, being used as a marker for puberty and sufficient maturation. And no longer is the primary care doctor allowed to be the examining physician. It is put forth in the new policy that it will be the school district physician, or in her absence, somebody that she asked to do it for her. The height and weight are now required. Again, this is not a requirement from the state. The state does say if you do have a recommendation for height and weight, it should be the 50th percentile for a 14-year-old. Again, this was not stated in the policy that I received right here. It says height and weight, but it doesn't say exactly what the height and weight are. And students are still required to have parental permission to perform skills at a certain level and to be selected as part of the team by the coach. And I have some concerns about these recommendations. First of all, with the Tanner staging for requirements is now Tanner stage 5, which means full maturation. Up until now, it's been Tanner 4, which is usually menarche. 12 and a half to 13 years old is the average age. Menarche is associated with bone maturation. We're worried about growth plate injuries. And menarche puberty is really more associated with bone maturation than chronological age and height. Height has really nothing to do with bone maturation. I presume that the goal of this requirement is to make sports safer, but there's really no evidence that bigger kids are safer than smaller kids in most girls' sports and non-collision sports, and there's no evidence that Tanner 4 children are safer on the field than Tanner 5. Most adolescents, as I said before, get their first period between the ages of 12 and 13, which is akin to Tanner stage 4 in most girls. And most of the time that happens in 7th and 8th grade. Most of these children are not Tanner 5, and many women will never really be considered a Tanner 5. Certainly growth plate injuries are bad, but the guidelines being suggested aren't likely to help avoid growth plate injuries. The state does not require female athletes to be a Tanner 5 to play up. Our district is proposing this, and I don't understand why the ICSD is proposing more difficult guidelines and a higher level of maturity for female student athletes in 7th or 8th grade trying out for a JV sport. The other problem I have with this is Tanner staging is subjective. Different physicians can look at the same adolescent, and one person might call them a Tanner 3, one person might call them a 4, or someone might call someone a 5, whom another doctor would call a 4. Many children will not grow to be Tanner 5 adults, and certainly many of them will not be Tanner 5 by the time they're a varsity athlete, especially if they are lean and athletic. We all know that lean and athletic adolescents are going to weigh less. They might have delayed menarche also. This seems to discriminate against the athletes who are actually more fit, often stronger, even though they weigh less, and are often very skilled. Tanner staging in this policy also requires a physician not known to the student or her family to examine her genitalia. I would rather see the primary care physician who knows the child perform the Tanner staging, which is something that is usually done at every well-child check. As far as the height and weight requirements go, as I stated before, the state does not require 7th and 8th grade girls trying out for JV sports to be the 50th percentile for a 14-year-old, which is 5'3" and over 110 pounds. I feel that this is discriminatory. Many students and adults will never attain that standard. And girls who are 5 feet tall and less than 100 pounds are often the best and safest players on the field, especially depending on the sport that we're talking about. I think that there will be unintended consequences of this, as there has already been for the JV girls soccer season, which is non-existent right now. And I think it will have significant consequences if this is approved in this form for the girls JV basketball and varsity. There will probably be girls who make the requirements from a maturation standpoint, can't play who would be able to play JV, but if there's not a JV team, they'll play up on varsity. I don't see that as being safer. The bigger girls will get to play when they might not be as skilled because they need to fill those spots. I don't support the requirements for height and weight to try out for a JV sport. I feel it's discriminatory and not creating a safer environment. And I think that once an athlete passes the maturity guidelines, which there should be some guideline, the athlete has an opportunity to demonstrate his emotional maturity, athletic skills, athletic ability, and fitness to the coach, who will then decide of those kids who meet a certain criteria who's going to be on the team. So, thank you.
More if you would consolidate the number of people.
We should make that announcement.
So before we go on to the next person, I will point out our typical time for those who wish to speak is 3 minutes. And I do believe we consolidated several speakers into one, I believe. So
Yes.
just for folks listening in and watching, we're not making, we certainly are try to stick to our 3 minutes, and it's been our process in the past and policy, but we're pretty open. But we do have several that have crossed themselves off and are not speaking. So just so and Chris, feel free to interrupt and start going again.
Leah Ehrlich.
Hello. Hello. I am here to talk about some of the same points that Karen brought up, but from a more specific standpoint of how it's going to affect the girls' teams going forward this year. I have 3 children. Jamie's an 8th grader at Boynton, and my sons, Riley and Eli Lasda, graduated in 2011 and 2013. And my husband Brian and I have been very active in sports for probably almost 20 years at the Youth Bureau, and specifically with both the boys and girls travel lacrosse teams for the last about 18 years. So what I'd like to talk about is we've been really outspoken advocates for kids playing at their age level all the way through for the past 20 years. I still believe that that's the best thing for kids, if you can have them playing with their grade, with their cohort, keeping those groups together. That's how you get, I mean, it's good for the kids, it's good for the scholastic teams, it's good for everybody. That being said, last year when Jamie was in 7th grade, she played modified soccer because there were big numbers at soccer, and she felt comfortable there. She would have done the same with basketball and lacrosse. However, it was pointed out to us that there were about 10 kids, possibly at the most, who were going to play JV lacrosse. A couple of them had never, JV basketball. A couple of them had never played basketball before. So they talked Jamie and a few of her friends into trying out for JV. 3 of the 7th graders made JV last year, and all 3 of them started almost every game and played the entire season. By the end of that season, we had started with 11 kids on the team. I think there were 9 kids suited up for the last few games due to injuries, grades. I mean, you always lose a few kids. Somebody moved away, and 9 kids is not enough. So when we looked at what's coming for basketball this year, and you take the numbers from last year and how many seniors there are, I mean, I'm looking at possibly 7 returning players for JV. 3 of them in 8th grade, 1 of them in 9th grade, and unless we find a bunch of new players who didn't play last year and who didn't go out, because I don't think there were cuts, or if there were, very few cuts. So unless some of these other kids who don't seem to be able to qualify this fall for soccer are going to be able to qualify, I don't see where you get, even 10 or 12 kids to play girls JV basketball. Jamie, Haley, and Maddie will be grandfathered into JV because they played last year. But I don't think that means they're grandfathered into varsity. So if there is no JV team, I don't believe they can go back to modified because they've already played a full JV season. So I think you're going to have a lot of girls who are really kind of out of luck who have put 10 solid years into learning a sport. The figures are really quite similar for lacrosse. We had a lot of kids graduating. We only had 21 kids on each team. The 7th and 8th graders started and played a lot at JV last year. The team was great, they were 12-1. But you take all those 9th and 10th graders and move them up to varsity, and we're looking at maybe 8 or 9 JV players for the cross. So those are my specifics for why I think this policy is going to have huge ramifications for this group. One thing I'd like to think about is possibly that if people believe that that's the way we want to go, that we want to keep 7th and 8th graders playing with 7th and 8th graders, and that's a goal that I think is worthy, then maybe it could be incrementally put in so that we don't have this weird, huge cohort of current 8th graders being the ones who bear the brunt of not having sports, because there aren't enough kids ahead of them to really field these teams. Those are really the main points that I had about how it affects us. One other thing is, I think modified sports is a really pivotal point. I'll just be a few more minutes, and I am speaking for about 10 of them back there. So, I think it's a lot like kindergarten. It's really the first chance for a lot of kids to be on a team, if they haven't had the opportunities before that. And I think it's really the school districts and public education role to level the playing field. So you've got kids coming in who have played 10 years of club sports, and you've got kids who have never played sports. And if the teams are overcrowded, if the teams don't exist, if kids get cut, I think what happens is the families with means to do so, whether it's financial, transportation, education about sports, any of those things, information, they'll go find an elite club team. They'll go pay somebody a whole bunch of money and make sure that their kids can play sports. And for the people who don't have the means for whatever reason, financial, many, many reasons, those kids will probably be lost to sports. And I just think that's sad. If I'm going on the assumption that most of the people in this room believe that sports are good for kids, particularly good for adolescents and for girls. I think it's just there's a lot of information out there about why that's true. So I just anecdotally can say that the teams that my sons were on, the kids that they lost to those teams, were probably some of the kids who really could have used sports, to stay involved with school. But if they don't meet the expectations, kids quit or they go play for a Syracuse team, if they can. So that's really all I have to say.
Excellent.
Chrissy Trumbull.
My name is Christine Trumbull, and I have one child that's already gone through who's a runner, and I can guarantee you most of those kids on that team did not break 100 pounds until after they graduated. So there's a size issue, obviously, with other sports as well, running, wrestling. For most wrestlers, they rely on some of the middle school kids to make those lower weights. So there's a lot of sports are involved. I would like to see the coaches take a big role in this, though. Maybe some meeting beforehand, the coaches, the JV and the varsity coach talk away from parents and away from just what are our numbers? How many do we need? So that is known, so that, it just seems like there was there needs to be more information out there, because I had heard that the 7th grade guys were trying out, but I only heard the day before it was happening. So there was a lot of misinformation out there, which is obviously why we're all here. But I would like to see the coaches very much involved in this. Let's have, what are the numbers? What does a coach want, on a team? That's all I'd like to see. Thank you.
Thanks.
Chris Thomas.
Well, I think the ladies that have gone before me have really addressed a lot of these points and brought in a lot of the data that shows why it's important for us to take a moment to think about this carefully. What I'm going to talk about is a little bit piggybacking off what she just said, in that the coaches need to be involved. That's very important. I'm from Jamaica, and I've played for the Jamaica national team. I've traveled around the world. I've played everywhere. In every single scenario that I've played 2-3 years up. Wasn't necessarily very tall, even though I'm taller right now. When I started out, I wasn't necessarily very tall. And it is very important to have the coaches involved. Why? Because a lot of these girls that we're talking about, especially in the 8th grade, these are girls that have been playing soccer since they were 8 years old. Each sport is different. When a trained professional looks at a kid and see what they do on the field, there's skill. It's just not just skill talking about how they can handle the ball, but it's about maneuverability. How do you avoid somebody that's bigger? Soccer is a unique sport in that each height that you are and weight that you are, you have a particular advantage. And you learn, if you have the proper coaching, to take advantage of those skills, take advantage of those things that you have intrinsic to you. And a lot of these girls have that. They've learned how to do that because they have been playing against bigger girls than them all the way up. Some of these girls that are playing JV now, they play against our girls in the regular leagues, in the club teams. So there's no way you can use a system that, essentially take them out of playing when the same girls that you're playing against are playing. There has to be some system that allows you to be able to look at it and look at the skills of the girls. They weren't even given a chance to touch a ball or be on the field or do anything. To say, is there something about a height? There's a short girl that would not make your current requirements, as written, although it's not been accepted yet. But that girl, since she was 8 years old, has shown prodigious ability to put the ball in the back of the goal. The forwards across the world in soccer make the most money. The reason why, 50 million, 100 million, you know why? Because they have to be able to hold down flight or fright, look at what's going on, have bigger people running at them and put the ball in the back of the net. Not just huff it, like people like to say, bang it, but just put it into the corner. This girl's been able to do that since she was 8 years old. Advance her now to 13, 14 years old and watch her play. It's magic. I look at that, it brings tears to my eyes to hear that she's not playing. Why? Because it means that she has to go back and play, what's it called? Modified. Have you guys ever seen a modified game? Do you know what it's like to be a talented person and then go back below your level and have people just running around crazy like this? It's not an experience that inspires you to move on. So there has to be some way, as it was pointed out, to bring the coaches into the system, to have them look at the girls and evaluate on some charter, not just the height and weight and all these other things that you're talking about. Girls and boys can transcend their age, height, weight by having real skills that have been honed over years of playing. And we have to somehow bring that into consideration.
I think I might be the last one to speak about athletic placement.
No, I don't think so.
No.
So,
Sorry.
you got a minute. So you have a minute.
I will brief. Thanks,
We're
Chris.
shooting to, the rest
All
of
right, so I just thought maybe I could share a quick story that would help the board as you consider a reasonable policy and approach to this issue. I have two daughters, one who's going in 9th grade, one who's starting in 7th, or rather 6th. And this is a story about my older daughter who played on varsity hockey last year. The board doesn't know there isn't a JV program for girls varsity hockey, only varsity. So last year, 4 middle school girls were invited to try out for the girls varsity team. 2 of them were declared eligible by all of the standards that were used during last year's placement, including Tanner scores and that. The other 2 were declared ineligible, primarily because of their Tanner scores. And right here is, I think, a situation where the board and the people who were involved got it right. Those parents had an appeal process. They were able to meet with the administration, the coach, the medical director, and the parents sat down, got together, and came to a decision. And it turned out that all 4 of those underclass girls had the opportunity to play. They all had a great experience. No injuries were incurred by any of those players during varsity lacrosse, or varsity hockey rather, and it would have really been a shame if they didn't have an opportunity to have that experience. As I understand, that's okay. As I understand the guidelines this year, as they're more strict, I don't think any of those 4 players would have been eligible to play on that team and have that experience if the guidelines that are being implemented this fall were implemented then, and that would have been a shame for sure. So just as the board considers a policy, please bear that in mind, and I hope that programs like girls varsity hockey and the other JV programs that we're talking about will not be so dramatically affected. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. We do have other names, Chris, correct?
Yeah.
Are you waiving? Does anyone else wish to speak? I mean, it's so.
Do you wish to speak? I have 3 more names.
I'm saying,
I'm Jeff. I'll cede.
I'm Allie.
Allie,
You're
Diane.
on the feed.
No, that's no problem. We just want to make sure everyone has that opportunity. And Chris, is there anyone else?
That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for speaking. Obviously, we're going to get into this issue in a few minutes. So, board responses at this point?
Or I'll give a brief response now. As chair of the policy committee, we've been thinking about this policy for probably about a little bit less than a month, maybe about 3 weeks. I would like folks to know in the audience is that at this point in time, there's been no official adoption from the City School District. It's a policy in review. There was a program put in place this fall to try some things out, and some lessons obviously were learned. This is not at ICSD's doing, as we all know. This is, and as those of us who've been around in public education in New York State for a while know that there are conflicting and have been conflicting reports that came down from the state. Originally, this was a mandated change in the athletic placement policy. Information started leaking out later in the summer that we had a little more discretion, and so trying to figure out what the state is asking us to do and what it's not asking to do has been some of the problem. We will not be discussing the policy tonight other than to give the board an update, but I invite anyone who's interested to join us at our next policy committee. It's on Thursday. We'll be talking about this policy a little bit more in depth and detail and actually doing some of the policy writing. For those folks who like to be wordsmiths, come join us. We'll have fun. But I can assure you the board is extremely, I feel like I can speak on behalf of the board. Without question, we want as many students participating in as many extracurricular activities as possible, including athletics. And so the goal will be to write a policy that makes that open to as many students as possible while protecting the district from liability. Right, and is a concern of ours and a concern for our legal team as well. And so our ability to merge those will be complicated, but with all the wisdom in the room, we can make it happen. And so our goal is to have the same goals that everyone here has, right? So we'll do some of that work on Thursday. Please feel free to join us, 5 p.m., one of these two rooms.
Well, thanks, Sean, because I was wondering what the heck was going on. So this is...
It is on the agenda as a discussion item, just to give an update to the board about what's been taking place a little bit. I'll do a little more depth then.
Right. And to Sean's point, I mean, this board historically, from the get-go, through all the budget issues that we've had, is how can we maintain opportunities for kids at the modified level, because if we don't provide the opportunities there, then we know that we don't have a sustainable program, and we're going to, it just goes against everything that we stand for, basically. But Judy Max, but we will get an update in a few minutes, but Judy Max, go ahead.
I think I'm a little horrified at the lack of numbers. I'm an ex-jock, 2 artificial knees, and I love sports, and I think girls need to be encouraged. I don't know where we're failing to get numbers to play. We have an EDGE program. This is the first I've heard of the lack of numbers, specifically 9th, 10th grade, that would make 8th, 9th, make the JV. If you don't have a JV that's competent, you certainly aren't going to get a varsity team that knows how to play. I'm just very upset about the lack of numbers.
Could I add something to that I didn't say, or is that impossible?
Lee, go ahead.
One of the things I didn't talk about in terms of lack of numbers, it is sort of a glitch. It's not ongoing. We have projected numbers this year if kids cannot move up. For modified soccer, you'll probably have 40 to 50 kids trying out, girls. For basketball, we project 30 to 40 kids trying out for modified. Last year, there were 30 modified, and most of them were 7th graders. And probably same with lacrosse, 30 to 40. I believe we had 26 on the modified team last year, and then that big huge chunk that was on JV. So, I mean, you've got great numbers coming in the current 7th, 8th, and part of the 9th grade.
All right, we've been trying to add.
And to that end, we've been adding teams, right, with financial resources, including coaches, to make sure that we can accommodate that.
Right,
so,
right.
I just want that to be known as well for folks.
Right.
We're not anti-sports. Right?
Oh, yeah, no, well, part of that is the state, too, because you no longer have assistants. I mean, when the boys had 40 kids on modified lacrosse, they had 5 parents and 3 volunteer coaches.
Volunteers, yes.
Now you have 0. You have 1 coach with 26 kids, and 12 of them never played lacrosse. I mean, it's
And how safe is
ludicrous.
Pat, go ahead.
Okay, as the board member whose children did not play sports, I'm going to say first off that I don't even know what Tanner stage my children were at in high school. But I suspect one of them shares with the physician's daughter who will never reach Tanner 5. I'm going to break that to her gently. She won't care. But we did have, one of the parents did come to our last committee meeting and brought up the question of Tanner stages and whether Tanner stage 5 was appropriate for an appropriate cutoff for female students. There is no language in the policy about Tanner stages, but Judy, you were going to follow up with possibly a discussion of that. Is that something you have done or will do by Thursday? I just wanted to let parents know that we were intending to look into this further, and I just don't know whether that's information that's ready for tonight or will be shared on Thursday.
Definitely Thursday. We plan to discuss it at length. I really wanted to be here because I think it's important that I hear what people have to share so I can take that information. But I have talked to the medical director. I've spoken with Sean as well. So we will be discussing that in great length on Thursday at the committee.
And just for people in general who may not be following the athletic proposed athletic policy, the physical height requirement is for contact, or physical requirements are for contact sports as opposed to non-contact sports. And of course, there is a so track. It's just that's not an issue, and for most sports, it's not an issue. But soccer comes down as a contact sport, and that's where it comes in. And you know, certainly there is a concern about huge physical disparities because with the problem with the, and I understand small can be quicker, that there just is a concern with some contact sports like boys football and ice hockey when you have huge disparities of size kids slamming against each other. That's really dangerous, and I know that soccer is not that same degree of contact, or not supposed to be. I'm married to a former soccer player, not Jamaican national or anything. Not even
It's harder to get out of the way in those sports. I can attest to that.
People have to be agile, and that's all the good. But we are keeping an open mind on that and wanting to do what's best.
And David, go ahead.
And I don't want to get too far into the weeds in this because we're going to discuss this on Thursday, but the recommendation from New York State, this thing that we're talking about, has shifted the Tanner scores in some ways from a 3 to a 5, and that's what's creating this angst that a year ago that we're talking about, a young lady might have needed a Tanner 3. Under the new guidelines and the recommendation from New York State, she now needs a 5. And that's sort of where all this shifting is going. We'll be discussing
To play JV.
To play JV, 3 to 5. Varsity was 4, now that's 5.
Yeah. What data does the state have about that? What did they provide in the way of background information? Have they provided any data to tell us that there's injuries involved or anything like that?
I'm not sure it was.
I'm looking for. I mean, it's a recommendation. I don't have to follow it. I'm inclined not to. But I'd like to know, somebody adopted a recommendation. Did they have data behind it, or is it just what they think?
Yeah, it's a state law.
It's state law.
I think part of it is coming out of the head trauma and the concussion research and studies and liability and just the public.
That isn't the argument I've been given. I've been told it was growth plates. So.
Tanner score doesn't matter with your head.
Yeah, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with your head.
In the Tanner was what that's.
Go ahead, Dave.
These are going to be the discussions on Thursday. Jeff Manwaring, our interim athletic director, has been talking to representatives from the state to find out exactly where historically this is coming from and why the huge shift from, for example, 3 to 4, 3 to 5. And we hope to have more of that data. Like Sean said, we're moving as quickly as we can, but we're not going to move so fast that we do it wrong.
May I add, every district that I've talked to is having the same hard conversation right now. It's not just an Ithaca City School District conversation.
Well, I don't have the same experience you have with other school districts, but other school districts I know have actually adopted the state's recommendations, right? So we de facto did that for the fall, with the idea of a conversation, but a lot of the teachers are just saying that this is what the state is recommending we do for APP, and this is what we're going to do.
I just want to say also in support of sports, my kids participated in sports all the way through middle school and high school, but that we did change it a little bit. The non-contact piece, waiving the physical requirement.
That's right.
We did that actually after we started in response to some information we learned and parents helping us with this process. So we didn't adopt it verbatim. We did change some things and are now very carefully looking at and taking all of the wisdom around us to make the final decision.
The state policy never would have excluded those kids from golf, like the Ithaca policy.
Right, it should have.
The state policy never would have excluded those kids from golf.
I believe what it says, and again, not being an expert in this, but I believe what it says is that the students need to be of average height and weight of the comparable height and weight of the team.
This is a conversation we're going to engage in on
Okay,
Thursday.
sorry.
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out. Is this on the agenda later, so that we're going to restart this conversation?
We're not going to reset the conversation.
In a few minutes?
I'm going to give a quick update, Brad, which includes some other contextual information beyond this.
Oh, so if I have questions, I need to ask them now.
Or you can come to policy on Thursday.
Let me ask them later. It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda, and for the record, Dr. Brown, I tried not to avoid contact when I was there are some sports that it's okay to run into people, which I'm very happy with. And let's talk about this in a few minutes and answer some more questions. If we could get through actually a fairly extensive consent agenda with a very long whereas and therefores.
I'll move the consent as presented, and if allowed to speak to it after it's seconded.
Second.
Second by Pat, she beat Judy.
All right, there's a couple of things in here that might be of interest to folks. We've had a problem with a dry well outside of Fairleigh J. Martin School. It's caused some problems with some roof drains. It's going to be dug up, replaced, and we have to adopt a seeker resolution on it that it's an action that doesn't require any further review under seeker. We're replacing an underground facility that's there, so you're going to see it dug up and you're going to see it put back in, and we're hopeful that it will then actually drain the roof properly. But unfortunately, I think, Amanda, we're going to lose a little bit of the playground for a period of time when this is done.
That's correct.
Is my recollection.
It's out to bid right now, and I would imagine by the time we open bids on September 17th, and by the time we secure a contractor, I would imagine October 1st will begin the work.
And it won't take long, but
minimum.
Unfortunately, we will be blocking off a small part of that playground for a period of time. Just want people to know what's going on, but we do need to make the drainage work properly. You'll also find here pages worth of whereases. You know, the lawyers get an extra $75 for every whereas. For refunding some of our existing bonds, that means paying those off with new bonds. This is called an advance refunding because the bonds are not currently callable. So we will put money in an escrow to pay off the old bonds, and we will make the debt service on the new bonds. We'll be doing that in order to save, if you're a present value thinker, you'll be saving $363,000 present value dollars. If you're a nominal dollar thinker, we'll be saving $440,000, depending on how you prefer to think about things.
And the discount rate.
And the discount rate's 2.58033076. Because that's the net interest, the estimated net interest cost on the new bonds, and so that's what it's used for. Just as part of our ongoing trying to find ways to save where we can, that'll reduce our costs a little over $20,000 a year until 2030. So that's on a present value basis. That's what's in there.
Saving a little bit of money.
Saving a little bit of money over time. Happy to.
But it's like your house. If it pays to refi, you do it. If it doesn't,
it's more than 3% of the outstanding bonds. A little 10.775 million bonds being refunded.
Right, 15 million original.
Right, now down to 10.
Face. Right.
Yep, that's correct.
it is there is a fairly complex and long document in your Dropbox with all the details from one of the firms. Yeah, right. And you should, if you have any questions, obviously. Are there any questions regarding that? Anything else?
We did discuss it at finance, but we didn't have the details at the time.
Right.
Saving money, we said go ahead.
I do have a question back
Sure.
at the transfer. I know I missed the finance. The 2 transfers for $49,000.
It's just moving them from one code to another.
I know, but what are they going to be used for? Projected needs?
I'd have to get the
book.
Yeah, the book to look at it. Okay. I no recollection.
Anything else? Move seconded, all in favor? That's everyone, including personnel reports and supplemental, correct? All right. That's everyone, Jennifer, and Dr. Brown. You get to talk now, Dr. Brown.
Just a little bit. Thank you for this opportunity. Just wanted to remind everyone, in the midst of all you've already talked about, tomorrow's a special day around here. Young people are coming back to school. And we're looking forward to welcoming all K through 6 and 9th grade and new students tomorrow. But I want to also say thank you to the board and staff and community members who came out this morning for our convocation, our annual convocation. Some things that highlighted this morning's event, we recognize staff members who have been here for 25, 30, and 35 years. It's very, very impressive to be here for that long. So we recognize those folks this morning. We also recognize Colin Gray, who was recognized with the Innovative Teaching Award, Innovative Science Teaching Award, the Lee Award from IPI and some other folks were there to give that to her. So congratulations, Colin. It was an overall great day. We talked about who we are, where we're from, and what we would be leading. And so we went back 5 years and started talking about where we started as a team and where we are today, and looked at some data. So it felt good. Folks were happy and ready to start school. Open houses were today. They started at the elementary level at 1 p.m. I was one of those parents walking in as nervous as anyone, trying to figure out how to navigate a kindergarten class, and it's tough. So tomorrow, that day, for a lot of young people in that community, I'm looking forward to it. And that's all I have for right now.
Because tomorrow's a big day, Dr.
Tomorrow's a big day.
Landon's first day. Without further ado, let's get back to it, to the APP, the placement policy. Sean?
Sure. So if the board hasn't been able to tell by now, we're reviewing an athletic placement policy. Partly, as I mentioned before, it comes down it was seemingly a mandate from the state, but it's at state level to revise and revisit our athletic placement policy. It's raised a couple of questions for us as a policy committee, in particular if the board, for those long-term board members, remember a couple of years back we had an athletic academic eligibility policy, which is currently the number that NSBA wants us to use for this new APP policy. So we've been having a conversation about removing that current athletic academic eligibility policy and having a much broader conversation about extracurricular activities in general. Folks remember, I was one of those folks advocating, it's interesting we have an academic eligibility for folks who play sports, but not an academic eligibility for folks who do drama or orchestra, and should we use the same sort of model, because we thought it was a very progressive model. How do we use the key adults in young people's lives to leverage them to continue to do well in school? And so we're going to have some conversations with David Brown about that and try to figure out what that may look like for extracurricular activities as well. But the real issue on the table on Thursday will be talking about the athletic placement policy, reviewing things like Tanner scores, which is I've been more informed about than I ever cared to be. But now I have some insight on it, looking to see what other schools are doing. And so there was some process in place for the fall. We are hoping to, through input and community discussion, to have an official board-adopted policy in time for winter sports. And so I would assume the next couple of policy committees will be devoted heavily pretty much to the athletic placement process and what we'll be doing going forward. And so I think it's a general update. I get the question for impression. There's some questions from at least Brad and some other folks, so I'll stop there. And I don't know if any of my other fellow board members have anything to add, Pat, or I would say Judy, but Judy wasn't there.
But certainly there would be questions, and Brad, since you deferred, go ahead.
Yeah, well, and part of it is because I'll be conducting other school district business Thursday afternoon. I can't be at the policy committee meeting, can't be two places at once, or at least I haven't figured it out yet, how to do that. You know, I guess in way of a question, one of the things I don't hear us considering is whether parental permission is something that we would ask for.
It's already required.
It's already required, so if they move up. And so I'm trying to figure out why then I want to protect myself from anything beyond that, you know, as far as parental permission. I'll point out that we've got two coaches who played sports for us when they were in high school, one of whom is teaching at the high school this year. I'm not sure she's ever reached 5 foot. I don't think so. I don't think she's ever reached 5 foot. I'm quite certain she played hockey as an 8th grader. We've got another coach who would have been the JV soccer coach. I know she played JV as an 8th grader. She may be a little over 5 foot, but not by much. You know, two, and they both went on and played in college, by the way. Good players at their sports in college. So I'm concerned about adopting something having to do with height and that sort of thing, just given evidence that's right in front of me and obvious to everyone here. So I'm concerned about doing that. I'm concerned about taking away opportunities, shrinking the number of sports choices that we may offer. I'm concerned about that, and you know, pushing some young people away from athletics by telling them, you know, well, maybe you've got enough skill, but we don't think you're old enough, so why don't you sit it out for a year? Having had 3 daughters, I can tell you that if I told them to sit it out for a year, that would have been the end of it. They never would have come back. Once you tell them you're not good enough or you can't play or whatever, they take that to heart. I'm not good enough and I won't play and I won't come back. And I think that's, I'll show them. And I think that's an issue and something you should take into consideration going forward. And we heard tonight from someone who competed at an international level, and she told us what her size was, and again, didn't meet the size and competed at the international level. So I want you to think about those things to the extent that a parental permission can overcome some of the concerns. I'd like to see us do that. So that's, you know, much of what I would say at a meeting on Thursday. I'm just sorry I can't be at both places.
Just a quick response, if we could. So that makes complete sense here. Let's bear in mind that this is not necessarily new. The idea of a Tanner score is not new. It's the change in the Tanner score that's new. So there's already been a maturation test to be able to play up in regard. Yeah. The other thing is that what we're asking BS&K is, right, you sign a permission slip, but if the state has put a recommendation to what they think is reasonable, and we know they're not reasonable, right, and we choose to not do that, then what is the liability of the district should someone get hurt? And as we know in this litigious nation, that's...
Well, that's why I had the question, what's the data? What am I protecting from?
Absolutely.
What am I protecting from? If we're talking about one data point in, you know, New York in the last 10 years, you know, if we're talking about 15 children who were injured last year, you know, I may think about it differently, but I've not heard, and I'm thinking if the data was that obvious, it would have been right out front.
The last point I was going to say is we have we have on occasion disagreed with our own legal counsel.
Yeah, I know.
And this may be a case where we do that as well.
Exactly.
Right, so we'll be having this conversation. I'm just telling people what some of the reasoning and thinking was behind what's taking place.
Right. Well, and we've agreed that one of our legal counsel is pretty much to the right of anyone you can name.
Overly protective.
Yeah.
Well, right, conservative in trying to protect.
Beyond conservative.
Right. And then Judy Mack.
I just have 2 questions, and just from what I was hearing tonight, it seems like in some ways the policy that's been considered may kind of impact the girls a little bit more than the boys. So I mean,
the new Tanner scores are a pretty big jump for young women.
Yeah, so I guess for me that's a problem.
Absolutely.
And the other question I have is say you guys decide in the policy committee to go for, you know, wow, we don't really want to go for such a strict will you also discuss something for those kids that are being shut out of the fall sports? Like, is there going to be process that could
So,
work for them?
what I'll just say is the policy committee isn't going to decide anything. The policy committee will make a recommendation to the board, and the board will then decide what we want to do, right? So this will come back to us.
Okay.
So we'll put something in writing a little bit more thoroughly for a first reading, which I'm sure many people thought was going to be this evening. We'll have another chance, at least 2 more chances to talk about this policy. There'll be a first reading and a second reading before it actually gets officially adopted. So, yeah, that's always a consideration. In terms of what we're doing for the fall, that's out of my realm.
That's, well,
Judy
Max,
Jeff, or we can ask our AD about that.
Okay.
right, and Judy Max can go ahead, but I certainly need to weigh in. Go ahead, Judy.
My concern is the liability. I would like before the next policy meeting to have a definite, minus the conservative lawyer. I mean, I would let everybody play, but I don't want to be sued. And if a parent signs away those rights, if we can come up with a form that we will not be sued, then I think we're okay. But I don't know if we can.
Those waivers usually jokes, but I understand what you're saying.
Right, it's, you know, that's, well, exactly.
Acknowledgement, it's not a...
Right, exactly.
Not legal talk.
So, well, I'll ask my question, and David, feel free to weigh in. I'm quite confused. So we have not changed our policy.
We changed our practice for this spring, for this fall.
We did not change our policy, right? And a practice was changed, and I heard about this last week, I guess. So that's where I'm a bit confused about. Decisions were made upon recommendation from the state that we may adopt at some point.
Well, if I remember correctly, the state was mandating folks to adopt an updated APB policy to begin with, and then as the summer unfolded, it started shifting and changing.
And that's pretty usual.
It is usual for New York State.
Right. And so, so how many sports were affected this fall?
That's data that we can probably pull. I'm sure someone probably knows, but we had some conversation about it. We can ask Jeff to pull that for us exactly.
Right. So I would certainly like to know those numbers. David, go ahead.
Well, in true transparency, one of the other things with this new recommendation from the state is we heard how there were 4 hockey students last year, 2 passed the Tanner and then 2 asked for a waiver and moved forward with the waiver. The new recommendation from the state is absolutely no waivers, and that's something else we're going to have to discuss. And I hope that people will bring that information with them. I just wanted the board to know that there was a second level to the recommendation from the state.
Sure. And well, David, and as you know, this board, well, I guess speaking for the board or speaking for past boards, we have not been terribly impressed by what comes out of Albany over the past 8-9 years, Brad. So we've worked it out on our own. Judy, did you have something you wanted?
I was just going to add about the waiver piece. It was my understanding that the state said there will not be any waivers. I'm not sure that, and maybe other people can help me. That's not a recommendation.
There is no waiver because a waiver is not required. The districts, when I talked to the guy at the New York State Board of Ed, he said that the state is pushing it back to the district, the local level. The district needs to decide there's no need for a waiver. The medical director can make a decision based on that student's skill level, that student's safety level, that student's sport, that student's gender.
Sure. Comes down back down to the individual student and
there's no waiver required.
His or her ability. So right, okay. Thank you for that. Congratulations on getting through to Albany. That's appreciate that.
Were there any boys tonight? I mean, we're hearing about girls.
Boys sports affected?
Yeah, were any boys?
The sports, I believe, that were requesting students to play up or golf, soccer, and what's the last one? Swimming.
Oh, okay.
Those were the 3 sports.
And did we reject players from all 3?
We didn't reject.
Did we reject 7th and 8th graders from all 3?
No, because golf was a non-contact, so that was the one that got changed. So
I don't
don't think any students.
And what's the contact in swimming?
Yes, my daughter.
Girls did,
swimming is
girls
not-
did, yes, girls rejection across the board.
Yes, I'm not.
Yeah.
Girls
12
did.
did.
Girls
did.
We all have kids who, all
It was all
of
just
us have
girls.
kids who got rejected.
But quite
JV
honestly, I
soccer.
can't remember how many
Who would have
boys.
made the JV requirements with
Yeah.
last year's, the current policy,
That's right.
and which is quite a few.
Okay.
Significant jumps.
Do I have to come on Thursday? It sounds like it'll be quite the meeting, but,
Policy is always the place to be at, so we're just we're just continuing our
I know, Sean, it's always it's such good work, and I did have other stuff, but if I'm there, great. If I'm not, you know my concern. Exactly.
We all share the same concern.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean.
One last piece, if I could, before, this is just a personal thing for someone who is involved in policy, who's been writing policy, who in theory has a PhD in policy. It's in theory. I don't know what it is.
How's that working for you, Sean?
Some days better than others. And I just say this to Diane and some other folks. What's always interested me as well is that there's always a difference between paper and practice. And so oftentimes policies on paper may look good until we realize what the implications are for folks. And so, and for me in particular, this has been a learning lesson, right? To see that, right, the New York State saying this, I get it's New York State, but we think about trying to protect students, we want to be safe, we want to protect the district, and then we start realizing that it has a different impact than what was anticipated. And so this is one of these policies. We had another policy not so long last year that did the same thing. This is one of those policies that remind me of the imperfection of this, and more why we need to sort of have a larger conversation to try to see what's best for our community, right? And so I am looking forward to the conversation on Thursday to make sure that the policy actually matches what we want to be in practice for young folks.
No, thanks, Sean. You've done a great job frankly, of being chair of the policy committee and really working through these, a lot of very difficult issues. So I appreciate it quite honestly, and I'm not making a joke, Dr. Brown. No, about policy committee. No, it's sincere. It's these are many, many difficult issues that you and the policy committee have had to deal with and work through for the benefit of the kids of the district. So, anything else regarding? Are we good?
I just want to thank the parents again for very informative.
So, Dr. Brown, I think we are ready for the next item, which is, I think we're going to have some high school folks talk about.
Special guests here tonight. If y'all want to come on up, that'd be great. Sure. So at our last meeting, we had folks from DeWitt Middle School and Bell Sherman. Dan Brown was here and Mac Knight, some people on this guy. Talk about the mobile device implementation, what it's looking like and feeling like in their buildings. I've heard from vendors and others that what we're doing here is the largest deployment of mobile devices in the state to this point. So a lot of eyes on it. We're getting calls from folks in Syracuse, Binghamton, media outlets wanting to know how this is going. So we have Mr. Trumbull and his team here to talk about what it's looking like at the high school and maybe to share some of the comments on what people are making already who've gotten these devices into their hands. So welcome, Mr. Trumbull.
Good evening. We'll share some comments that shared with us. But when you talk about mobilization, we're rolling out 1,500 units. This week we've already rolled out 100 units. Maggie was part of the rollout team. They had 6 or 7 folks in that 3 times over the summer, and a number of times that we met leadership team throughout the spring to prepare for this fall. And I asked Maggie New to come here this evening, and I do want to say to you, I say to my staff all the time, you got to be a mom or dad first, and she has her kids and 2 babysitters locked up in her room over in the K building here, so we're going to try to get her going here pretty quick. But she actually physically has rolled these out to her link crew, and we thought it important that maybe she'd come over and share with you what the link crew does at the high school. And yeah, some of the comments that the students have shared with us regarding fantasy football and other pieces along those lines. And so I'll turn it over to her for a moment, and then get back and kind of talk systemically about what we'll have her go, and then I can talk a little bit more about what PDs look like and what it's going to physically look like to roll this amount of units out, and to make sure our networks are ready to roll. So we'll do it that way.
I am Maggie New. I'm the Ithaca Link Crew Coordinator. which means, if you're not familiar with the program, it's a mentoring program for upperclassmen. So we take about 100 leaders, juniors and seniors, and then a sprinkle, probably about a dozen sophomores. Bring them in for 2 days over the summer and do a 6-hour training. Their role is similar to college orientation. They will bring in the freshman class with me tomorrow, so if any of you are available at 9 o'clock, we bring in the whole freshman class along with the staff to the Bliss Gym, which will be pretty exciting to see about 400 kids come in and do it together. During their 2 days of training, which is about 6 hours a day, they go through team building, they do academic connects, social connects. It's kind of like Inception. The training that I put them through is the training they'll put their freshmen through, which is really cool to kind of see them come together. The great thing about Link Crew is a lot of our kids are entwined in other groups, clubs, and activities at IHS. So whether they're athletes or dramas or they're a part of their own clubs, they then weave that into the freshman class to kind of hope to get them involved to be a part of it. When we met in May to talk about training for them and what training would look like, we always have a special guest come in. We've had DASA come in, upstanding training. We've had the troopers come in to do internet safety. This year we thought with the Chromebooks coming out, it would be a nice incentive and for them to have those Chromebooks in their hands before others did, and they would have that kind of week of practice and training with it. So we met with Jason and Don and Carl to kind of talk about what that would look like and what the rollout would look like. So on the second day of training, for the last hour, the IT guys came over and we rolled out just under 100 Chromebooks. For them, it was pretty well. I mean, these kids kind of manage themselves, go through the first thing was power. How do you get power to them? Knowing power cords, doing that part. Rounded up a few power cords and gave them probably between 20 and 40 minutes to play with the devices to get their hands on it, their own device. I will say the one kind of carrot that they had to do was to return the forms. All but one link leader either brought the form back and the one opted out. Wasn't ready for the device, wanted to wait. So I thought that was really impressive that out of 93 kids, 92 brought the forms back. We collected them, they used it like their ticket to get the device, had it there. So far, the kids, I've heard good things about them. The kids are happy to have them. The turnkey is the fact that on tomorrow, Wednesday, they'll bring in the freshman class. So they'll be able to give their experience so far to their crews. Then on Thursday and Friday during their free periods, which I have quite a few seniors, so they have more, they will then turn and help out during their PE classes to help roll those out to the underclassmen and to the seniors. The reason why I kind of went to Dom and to Jason to say it was, one, I needed a guest speaker, but also they're a good group of kids that will take this type of device, freedom, responsibility, and do well with it. And they have, they found out the fantasy football was blocked, Pandora, those types of things. But they also use it to kind of explore. I've had questions about the Common App. How do we get it so that it's more accessible with a Chromebook so that they can start working on those things. But then they know the responsibility is there. It's put out to them point blank. You were the first to have this. You were the expectation. You were the role models for it. And they wear that, I hope, very high on their priorities at IHS, and know that the expectation is that they're going to pay it forward and go from there. As far as the physical devices, they were happy to get them. Power was honestly the biggest factor. I do have 3 power cords now in my room that will be there. But for them, they just needed the time to kind of play with them, get to know them, and come back and work together and work as a crew to kind of do it.
The one request they do have is if there's some sort of a blog or information forum that they can post questions to. So for example, when a student couldn't get a particular website, is there a reason why? Who can answer that? Or with some people were not having problems with the Common App, others were because it was too much information to load onto the Chromebook. So those types of things where either peers or the IT guys can respond, and it's virtual and it's right there, they can go with it and run.
So we started that rollout, and that's about 100. And so what it's going to look like for 1,400, it'll look something like this, and we're going to use one of our early adopter groups, and I'll say that in our planning, we range in anything of an all-school assembly to have discussions that way, and then line students up and employ students, so to speak, to hand out the devices. And what we landed on, we've taken one of our early adopter curricular areas, and that's been PE. I observed many PE teachers last year with outside iPads, and it was an archery unit, and they were taping one another. My word, taping. They were recording one another with the iPads. They were giving each other instant feedback, and they were sharing that stuff. And that's really what we start thinking about when we talk about tech integration and engagement. Last week, during our PD day, we rolled out our new vision for the high school, where every student is engaged. And we see using these devices as a level of engagement on a lot of levels. We can get into that in a moment as well, but we're going to take the PE folks. All school starts on Thursday and Friday, and really in the mindset of let's get everything out to students. We sent out our opening day packet a month ago with the permission slip asking families. I've done a robocall saying bring your permission slip in. We've had a number already come in. We're updating those into a school tool. And when students come into their PE class, they're going to be issued their Chromebooks. We'll do an overview of internet and cyber safety, ethics around that, and how to care for the machines. And then we'll have students with teacher assistants receive their Chromebooks right there in class. So the idea being the vast majority of students walk out on Friday with their device in hand, and then we as a teaching staff know that we're pretty set, ready to roll. I've gotten a lot of inquiries from staff as to, will all the students have this? Will the network support it? Are we ready to go? And we feel like we're ready to go. The PD day that we had last Thursday, we had 7 of our own internal folks offer workshops. We did 2 different sessions. We came together as an entire staff, talked a bit about what the rollout will look like, talked about our expectations. Many folks have been very frank in saying, Jason, you can walk by my classroom and expect that these are open all the time. And I will tell you that Dom and I did a community forum down at GAC this past spring, and we had about 40 or 50 community members. Very cautious about flipped classrooms. So if my child has 6 classes, are they now going to come home and watch 6 videos? And we're really talking a bit about it. So what does it look like? And I liken it to this, as I talk to parents all the time. Anna, a parent, she can't comment back there. But when we struggle to help our students with math, and the most common thing that I hear from folks about supporting kids with math homework is, that's not the way I learn math, right? So imagine now if the teacher did 30 seconds worth of 5 or 6 different proofs, not 44 minutes of a lecture in global history, 5 or 6 different proofs that if you're home with your child working on this and you see those proofs carried out, kind of reinforce those stages. So that's what we see. And I did say to staff, no, I don't anticipate the Chromebooks being open in every single class. If we would have said that 2 years ago with the Eno boards and the smart boards, it didn't work that way. But now that you walk by a class and you see engagement, you see teachers and students using those all over. So it's another tool. Honestly, I see Chromebooks likened to a scientific calculator, if you will. Other tools that they use in classes, whether it be video cameras or anything along those lines. So that's the engagement that we're going after. So we hope to have them all rolled out. I'll actually give you a sense of what our PD looked like. We had a session on setting up Google Classroom. One of the things that we see that many students are doing quite a bit is communicating with one another and sharing documents, and we see a lot of students doing those things. School tools, more advanced functions. 25 tips for beginning use in Chromebooks in the classroom. Web 2.0 toolbox, and don't ask me exactly what these could be. Socrative, Kahoot, Zaption, and things like that. We had some training on that. Cyber safety and ethics seminar, and facilitating peer-to-peer work on Chromebooks was just a flavor for what the staff engaged in that work last week. So We've approached it a lot of different ways. I'm hopeful to walk out with that nice tired feeling on Friday, to see students walk out and feel good about the equipment they have, and the staff understanding that these are tools, and we're going to try to engage one another with it and learn with the students, and really put the world at their fingertips, and how to do that in a pretty responsible way. Having been a principal when these things first came out, and working with staff to say, how do we put them away, how do we put them away, how do we put them away, I think our approach to saying, how do we ethically really go after some high-level learning and cyber safety, being on the front end of that, I see us in a much different place. So that's our quick update as to what tech rollout looks like at IHS.
Comments, questions?
The other thing I just wanted to add to was for Link Crew, on the second day of training, we do a freshman family night where we invite the family, the parents, and family guardians to come that night of, and we do a little, this is what the opening day will look like, this is what student services look like, this is our APs, our administrative team look like. And we did also talk about the Chromebook rollout, and Dom was there to kind of talk about that. We had just about probably over 150 family members there, which was a really great turnout. So I think that's another avenue in the future that we'll use to kind of get this type of information out. Having the permission slips right there to have them sign once they're okay with it. Having that quick turnaround, I think, would be pretty beneficial.
You reminded me of one quick beat we did roll out that evening. We're going to try to create what we're calling engaging moments, and try to deconstruct the maze of the high school, so to speak, by featuring different staff members, different children, different clubs, different organizations, so that the idea being, if families received a weekly blast email at home saying, click on this, and hey, it's Mr. Trumbull, I'm here with Megan, you are our Link Crew coordinator. Families have got a face, they understand how to connect, what are the 3 things that get you to know about Link Crew, how to go out for those things. Really trying to be proactive, again, to deconstruct some silos, but also to engage families and our larger staff and who we are and what we're trying to go after. So we can foresee those kind of uses as well.
Questions, comments? Chris first.
So what does the follow-up look like for our Link Crew leaders? Once we get this initial rollout, what does that look like?
So the follow-up brief tonight was I sent them a quick text message and like Remind 101 and said, hey, what's some feedback on the Chromebooks? What are you guys thinking? What do you like about them? What's going well? Those types of things. So they'll email me back with those types of bullets to go back. I then meet with Peter. I have an email going with, he's an IT guy that I talk to, kind of go through with him. The other part is meeting again with Dom, Jason, and Carl to kind of say, like, what's the next step for that PD, actually for the students, specifically to the 9th graders. So I imagine one of the things would be like how to use School Tool as a student. Like how do you go in, do your grades. And this will be something where the link leaders can meet with their small crews, so they can contact their crews and say, hey, we'll do a quick session, bring your Chromebook, this is how you do it. You can also use the same thing for Google. So if they're using Google Docs, that type of thing, where that instruction necessarily may not be given across all classrooms, the link leaders will then be able to do those academic sessions and connects to say, this is how you use Google Docs, and this is why it's like Microsoft Word, so they can make that jump between the 2 platforms. And then I think as a social connect, they'll use it just to check in with them, to keep in contact with them, to communicate, and they go back and forth to say, what's working, what's not working.
Andy, go ahead.
I would just kind of, since it's such a big momentous thing, what is the thing that you're like most excited about, and what are you most nervous about for the kind of the rollout?
Trying to narrow it down.
Jason, the answer is yes, right?
All of the above. I'm nervous and excited. I think we've got a good plan. I'm excited to see the kids' faces when the link. It's so much more normal to be back, to see the kids come back, to see the staff come back, and it's pretty reassuring to have that. So when the kids are sitting there with it in there, and my man Julio says, you gotta do something about this fantasy football. That's a level of engagement right there when you can approach your principal and have that kind of nuanced conversation. I think it's really pretty cool. Nervous about that our system will support it. Right, so our system, so we've tried to go through. I've never been a big what if guy, but we have talked this through with IT in a sense, because what I don't want to have happen is if we do shut the server down, so to speak, that we still have teachers having bandwidth to be able to do it. So we're not going to take a step back to all of a sudden we don't have any technology. So we've got a plan in place for that while we work through the kinks. And IT is guaranteed. It'll be a bit of a rocky road. No reflection on them. This is a big rollout. So, but there's a great deal of excitement around it. I think we've been pretty thoughtful in our conversations and included a lot of folks in our conversation. And I'm looking forward to learning with people. So when I see Zaption and I tweet that out that's one of our pieces, and then they retweet it and they're out from San Francisco, you start to be reminded about what a global society it is. And this is the world our kids have always known. Right? It's still foreign to, I'll say, me.
So it's really great that you have the kids taking such a leadership role in this. I think that's fantastic, and it's always great when other kids with kids on new stuff. So congratulations on that. Are they going to get any credit or any sort of, is it like an official club now this year? And will they be able to, use that for college references and things like that?
Most definitely. Link Crew's been at Ithaca High School for 10 years. And yeah, I've actually inherited the program from Kelly Metzler and Judy Kogan. Emily McCormick and and she's since maternity leave, so I'm doing it now. It is a club for them. We meet monthly. They have it on their recommendations, references. As far as the reward,
it's just
for these kids wearing a t-shirt. You'll see it. It's a black t-shirt tomorrow. It'll say keep calm, lead on. That's their reward. Like having their crews, this is one of the probably best things I've done in education is this type of leadership program, because everyone's like, you do such a great job. It's like 5% me and 95% them. They honestly step right up to it. Their reward was getting the Chromebooks. I mean, I look at it as like it was a good test to see how Chromebooks rolled out. But for them, it was actually having the device in hand and now kind of being able to pay it forward.
Link Crew has played a big role for a long time, regardless of technology. Again,
right,
it's
exactly.
not technology. It's
upper more
class,
mentoring.
Right, upperclassmen connecting with the underclassmen, and that's my kid did it. It was great. Yeah. It was excellent. And
showed me newness.
You're all right.
Yeah, a quick question. Well, not a question, a request. If we could, having a district device and realizing what some of its limitations are and the good things of it, I would love to hear what the students are saying. Right? I would love to get their feedback about what's working well for them, what they were surprised by. So I don't know how we make that feedback happen, but
some real life students perhaps talking to us. Sean,
their use, as we all know, their use with these devices so far exceeds what I'm even thinking about. That I love my students coming to my office and Doc, you gotta understand this program. Oh, great! Like I never would have known that, right? But I'm also realizing what these things. They're going to find the workarounds, but I'm also realizing what these things can do. So I would just love to hear how they're receiving them.
If I may, and the board allowed us to have the Superintendent Student Advisory Council that meets monthly, and we'll meet soon. And that consists of all secondary schools. So we'll have that group come and share what they do at that council meeting, but also how and they'll tell you how they feel about everything else too.
Great. Others? Anyone? I'm expecting, right, technology is great, but I'm expecting that the staff is going to shift fairly quickly to using these Chromebooks. Yeah, as far as my understanding, that's what Dom certainly intimated, and we discussed it here, is that the students will soon be submitting their homework through the Chromebook, and it'll be going to staff that way, and not handing in a piece of paper. I mean, that is the vision, correct? I mean, is that?
That's been a big part of our training, right? So in terms of what that shift looks like, and how does a teacher and student groups collaborate on particular work, sure. I mean, that's a functionality of it to say you're going to be paperless, and that, sure. But we want to make sure, and I hope I was intentional enough to say when we're talking about PD and Sept, we're drawing upon the expertise that we have in the building.
Right, it was like, we talked about the students, staff has been onboarded with the Chromebooks, during summer, and I don't recall exactly what you've done at the high school to prepare the staff. If you could probably enlighten me a little bit on what is going on.
We worked a lot in leadership last year, and folks were asking for Chromebooks. We've got a lot of early adopters. Maggie being one of them, Carlin another one.
Sure.
Armin, I go through an entire list. We've got cross-curricular things happening quite a bit. So I think the PD day was just a natural outgrowth of what we're already doing. So the PLC work that we're doing is going to shift. That's going to play a major role in terms of how we continue to learn with one another.
And ready for that, we've done quite a bit of other staff development over the last year too.
We have. So, you've heard about the summer staff development. Many of the workshops were led by secondary folks and then attended by many secondary folks. I will also add that the high school teachers have really led the way for many years in using Google Apps. So it's really not a device. So the device is nice so that kids can use them, but the high school really has led the way in using Google Docs, using Google Sheets, using Google Forms to talk to kids, polling kids, seeing how they feel about something or getting feedback on what they've learned. So they've been using the online apps, the software, for years, and they really have led the district with that, and they really have been helping us as a district to see how we move forward with the devices, because that's just a way to get to the software.
Great, thanks. Anyone else?
One question. So in the PE classes, when the students are given the Chromebooks, who's doing the presenting? Who's
Our IT staff is doing the, we're calling them the umbrella pieces. So what we envision is in one gymnasium we'll have 9th and 10th graders, another one we'll have the 11th and 12th graders, with the PE staff, with additional staff that don't teach 5 periods a day, graduation coaches, counselors, those folks there to help deliver the messages. And then so the initial rollout, as you know, we've got a pretty transient community, is then all that shifting beyond Friday moves to our library. That'll be a pretty central hub with our family liaison. So as families come in, we'll do the umbrella pieces with our community library staff, and then so students will be issued a Chromebook that day. Chromebooks will become the new locker, so to speak. Kids' comfort level comes very grounded when their locker works for that first time. I think the Chromebooks are going to play a very similar comforting level, if I could use that example.
Anything else for Jason and those who have babysitters that are waiting?
They can't go out if we wait for you to get home.
We had 9th graders in 12 hours.
So obviously we will get updates, and congratulations on the rollout so far. Link through is great, and
9 o'clock tomorrow if you want to come down. Definitely worth seeing.
We need somebody to rah-rah down there.
Yeah, clap, cheer.
Okay. And Jason, I suppose you have things to do tomorrow as well. So.
Hang with 9th graders.
Exactly. So thank you, and
Thank you.
And we'll finish up.
Good luck tomorrow. Yeah.
9 o'clock.
Yeah. Thank you.
So any other business by the board, or
move we adjourn?
Yeah, no problem.
apparently there's no more business, Dr. Brown, and so without objection, we are adjourned.
Focus on changing instruction that would help our students achieve. So we've done 2 of these inquiry cycles. They were kind of new for our staff, but the work that they've done and some of the progress that they've made is phenomenal. My work with them, in addition to Leading with Love, Matt Landau also introduced a book called Leaders of Their Own Learning, 2 principles. It's really about student engaged assessment. It's about what can we do as teachers to get kids to own learning and to own school, so that school isn't something that happens to me. School is something that I do. So we've been working a little bit with Beth Dreyer, TST BOCES, really examining some of our practices, how to make learning really explicit to kids, that they really understand why I'm doing this and what's important, and getting involved in the process so they feel more partners in that process. So that's been some significant and rigorous work for us this year, and I'm really proud of our work during that time, and I'm really proud of the teachers' commitment to letting me, allowing me, and allowing them to really have the opportunity as a time where it's focused on their learning and tackling some of these hard issues. In terms of our caregivers, we have a small but mighty PTA. I'm just amazed at what this small group of like 10 people pulls off. And when we pull off events at Enfield, teachers partner a lot. They come out at night, support family nights. Last year I began working with PTA and transforming sort of that traditional PTA meeting style, saying, you know what, half of your quote-unquote meeting time has to be parent involvement. We have to have a math night, have a science night, have a mindfulness night, have a health and wellness night. We have a folk and fairy tale night. Those are events that we get folks, kids coming back in because they're participating in it. They bring their parents. So those kinds of nights for us are really our opportunity to get parents into the school, feel welcome in the school, have some time to talk with them. We find the more informal nights and the nights where their kids are kind of showcasing their learning are really powerful moments for kids and caregivers and teachers.
I just want to reinforce one thing that Lisa said. About a year ago, this time, maybe a little bit later in the spring, we all, the central office leaders, met with BOCES, and we really specifically asked them to start bringing some of their services directly to us and embed them in our schools instead of everything having to be up on their campus. And so one of our first pilots with this has been at Enfield with their ELA staff developer is kind of embedded into the Enfield staff for a very regular scheduled sort of thing. And so we'll both analyze the success of that and also push or encourage, whatever verb you want to use, BOCES to continue to think differently about the way they offer services for ICSD. We think since we are such a different district in many ways in the TST network that we should have some things presented to us differently. So Lisa and her staff were quick to embrace that, and we thank you on that part. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and Lisa talked about this last year, just want to give it a quick plug. She's been doing something called visual thinking strategies at the school with an outside consultant. Very low cost, I probably would add. And so last summer, many of the Enfield teachers came in for a half day or a day to do a very intentional sort of staff development that's really, you'll give it better justice, but involving really drawing out eloquent answers from every student in your classroom, really deep and thoughtful responses to a piece of art, whether they're responding to one of their peers or they're responding to a teacher question. I was able to be a part of some of the training last summer and had an impact on me as an educator and probably as a parent too. So of course I started testing it at home. But it's a really intentional thing that they do at Enfield, and it may not be like the flashiest sort of change strategy in the world, but every classroom in the school is doing very intentional conversations with students where they're not accepting yes, no, sort of one-word answers to questions, and they are really listening deep and thoughtful responses from their students in response to a lot of times art, pieces of art. And so that's been something that's been ongoing at Enfield for the last few years that kind of sets them out too.
And we were able to expand that this year. BTS is happening in every classroom, K through 5. And we do have a trainer. She's great. She comes in 2 or 3 times a year. It's a model of professional development I really love because she will spend a day, we say BTSing, with the kids. And she will walk into classrooms and she'll do an image So, and model a BTS lesson, and then the teacher will do one, and then she'll provide the teacher with some collaborative feedback. But just to explain BTS a little bit better,
Better than
well, clear. Great. What it is really intentional. It looks easy to facilitate, but it's not, because as a teacher, you have to be pretty quiet, and you have to let the kids really do a lot of the talking. So what a teacher is doing during that time is they're asking kids to look at an image and asking them what they see. So a kid will give an answer or something, as the teacher has to paraphrase that, whatever the kid says, using other words. So we're talking about building rich language, lots of vocabulary. The follow-up question to that is that if a kid doesn't say something literal, is what do you see that makes you say that? So in a way, you're sort of doing that shift of the Common Core, requiring students to give evidence for their thinking using an image. Same thing we ask kids to do when they're looking at complex text now. Well, they have to read it, and then they have to make an inference, and then they have to provide supporting evidence. So it's a very intentional strategy, sort of foundational strategy for building some of that higher level thinking. Also, the cool part too is kids learn how to agree or disagree with their peers, revise their thinking, and the teacher really just sort of facilitates that whole conversation without imparting any judgment on any particular answer. Okay, like building that community of conversation with our kids.
That's much better than I did, but I do want to add one thing about when they look at when big longitudinal studies of effective classrooms across probably countries, international studies, when students are doing a majority of the talking, and it's intentional talking, achievement is higher. We've talked a bit about poverty tonight. A lot of times when high poverty classrooms are studied across different geographic locations, a lot of time the amount of student talk is much lower than so-called advanced classes. So this is trying to turn this in an intentional way just completely on its head, and so I just wanted to add that 2 cents in. So I'll be quiet.
Be quiet, Matt. We can. Any questions for Lisa?
Happy to take questions.
Oh,
I have a question. With a school with that high of a level of FRLP, can you help us understand what the gap is between how much the kids have mastered about subject matters in the class? In other words, my instinct would say that there would not be as much differentiated learning as possible, right? Given the narrative we're sold that all kids who come from a school with that level of income might all be a little bit behind, right? So it's almost counterintuitive, because the typical narrative is if we have more of a mixed income, then the kids who have a certain income are going to be doing much better, and the kids who have a lower income are not going to be nearly as proficient in subject matter. How does that play out in the school in which 70% of the kids all come from that class of student?
Right. So we do have high achieving students. I mean, our classrooms, what you'll see there is you'll see a diverse range, and 17 students before you. So there is a ton of differentiation going on. It's not, because in order to be successful, you have to reach the high. Right? So you've got to, and then you have this real diverse mix of kids with a lot of different, it's complex. There's a lot of different challenges, and a lot of different kinds of needs. So, everybody's there. Like we know what the learning target is. It's really being masterful, that designing that way that the kid is going to get there. So, I mean, that's the beauty of the collaborative model. I mean, you can see a lot of different approaches going on at the same time. You know, you can see some hands-on going on at the same time as maybe something less hands-on. I don't know if I'm capturing it well or explaining it right.
I think you answered it. There's still a gap.
There's
So
still a gap.
narratives are not relevant.
Right.
And it's
But
complicated to put together the system for each kid.
And our kids are amazing. I mean, and I say that, and I mean, every time Matt and Lavelle walk in, it's, you know, you would think, you know, maybe our culture and climate, I mean, yeah, morale isn't always great, but I mean, we're happy. Our kids are happy. I mean, they want to be there. You know, it's a warm, I always get compliments from visitors, you know, what a warm and welcoming place Enfield is. You know, the kids, I think, the love, the teachers care incredibly about them. I've seen teachers go above and beyond, as just like Brad said, to work with caregivers, meet with kids, provide kids with opportunities. I mean, I sort of have this movement this year to do Saturday field trips going on, so parents can come, and we're having some success with it.
I do go to Connor. I do cringe. I still cringe after all these years when I hear achievement associated with geography in this district. It's still, I still cringe. So I'm not going there, but you can live 2 houses from Cuba Heights and not be reading 2 levels above your grade, right? I mean, you can have challenges, you can have issues, and there are kids in Enfield that are probably reading 5 levels above their grade. And yes, they may indeed qualify for free reduced price lunch, but it's an interesting community, as our whole community is. Connor, did you have?
Thank you for the report, and thank you especially for the health and wellness piece. Same question I asked to Mr. Pollack. What's the response, not just among parents, not just among staff, but also parents to the state's designation?
To the state's designation? No one's happy about it. It's disappointing. We have a large number of students who, according to that measure, aren't making it. But we, like Brad said, we focus on a lot of different measures. I mean, if we look at our local achievement measures, Enfield kids are performing as well as a lot of the other elementary schools are on the ICSD assessments. So we try to stay focused on the positive. We're focused on teaching and learning, but we like to have fun too. One of my favorite things is we have a school-wide monthly assembly connected to our PBIS program. This year, we wanted it to be all student-led. So once a month, grade level is leading that assembly. They perform, they showcase some of their learning, sing, we get rowdy, and it's a great way to start the day. So, you're welcome.
The best thing about LAPs is that we get to hear about schools from the building leaders, and we weren't going to spend a lot of time on this, but actually it was. I think we all wanted to hear what's happening at Cuba Heights and Enfield, frankly, and that's probably one of the most important things that we do today.
When we're done with this part, I have a proposed agenda change that I'm going to bring to the board to have you chew over, but we'll try.
But again, it's a tremendous amount of work and identifying, knowing all the students that come into your class, come into your doors every day, and in doing what you do, we always appreciate that. We do. Any other questions for the group here?
What do we need to accept these plans?
We do.
Have you moved at all?
No, I'll move that we accept the Cuba Heights Elementary School local assistance plan.
Second by Eldred. Any other questions, comments? All in favor? That's everyone, right? And then
Move the Enfield local assistance plan for acceptance.
Second.
Second by Chris. He beat whoever else it was. Are we all good? Anything else? All in favor? That's everybody.
Thank you both.
Tremendous job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Matt, you had something you wanted to say now.
I don't know how exactly this might work, but we had two other things on the agenda tonight.
All right.
The Teaching is the Core grant update. That has been a very involved process. Grant-funded team of teachers with some administrators have reviewed assessments across the district. That's a fairly in-depth report and presentation. If it so pleases the board, we would be happy to do that the next board meeting. We can also do it tonight. We would like to do the summer PD update, which is a lot quicker tonight because we are going to start sharing that with staff the next few days, and so we thought we could do a quicker summer PD update. But it's all based on what you want to do.
I'm certainly good with hearing about Teaching is the Core next time. But that's just me. Are we good? No, yes?
I'm okay with the change.
Okay.
Anyone else? So we're modifying the agenda yet again tonight. But we appreciate that. And to that point, there seemed in the report regarding Teaching is the Core, it seemed like there was more questions raised than answered. So
some dedicated time would be good.
Right, exactly.
So
that proves I actually looked at it. So,
I read it this afternoon.
Yeah. So there's
that brain team you're on, Rob.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. It's the I was the last kid, in the playground. Yeah.
So, but before we get to professional development, I'll move the Special Education Committee appointments for acceptance.
Just to this point, we did this last time, but there was an edit to the document, and they come from the school if you can't change anything after we approve it. So we're just approving it again. So it's really the same document with a few corrections. So all in favor? Thanks. And now we're ready for the summer PD update. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. So we actually, when we present on the Teaching is the Core grant next board meeting, we will actually get a little bit deeper into PD because PD is a big part of it. We wanted to provide a brief overview of summer professional development because we're rolling it out in the next few days. As we talked about in the last board meeting, we have received some additional state funds, not as much as been reported in the press, but that the board at both the finance committee level and then at the board meeting level asked to designate a portion of that to professional development. So quite honestly, last year our summer professional development was not extensive. We focused solely on curriculum development, which is a great thing to focus on, and we tried to infuse professional development through that. We will continue with that, and they will speak to that at greater depth, but we will also broaden a little bit, and we will start again offering some summer professional development to support teachers with the one-to-one rollout. With our teaching of language arts, ELA, and mathematics, and some other areas. So if you all could provide just a quick overview, and then we actually want to, this is a very fluid document, this is not set in stone, we want to roll out some of the dates so teachers can start planning. We'd love to hear feedback either tonight or at the next board meeting about things that you feel that we might be missing or overlooking too, so I wanted to put that out there.
So you have a draft in your Dropbox that has a big draft across the middle of it. Many of these activities that we're offering are continuation of the work this year. We didn't just say, hey, we have some money, let's try this. We said, how can we continue this hard work that the teachers have been doing? We also are offering some new areas as we have new regulations and we have new opportunities through our one-to-one initiative. So many of these things will be offered this summer as continuations, and will also be offered this fall, and will be continuing throughout the next school year. really starting from our anchor of curriculum that we've been working on with elementary for the last 3 years, with middle school for the last year, and we're really shifting to supporting work that has been ongoing at the high school and really trying to infuse a lot of the district perspective of understanding by design and really thinking like an assessor into that work at all those levels, so that our anchors are the elementary, middle, and high school curriculum work. And you can see there are some draft dates on there, and from that anchor, we're going to be plugging in when we're going to be holding these different activities and opportunities for teachers. Because of some new regulations for English as a second language, which now the state is calling English as a new language, so you'll see that's EN now. We will be focusing on professional development support for English as a second language, or ENL, teachers, as well as classroom teachers that have students that are speakers of new languages in their classrooms. So we're really putting a focus on that, supporting these students. And so curriculum and English as a new language, and
we'll also be offering some inclusion and co-teaching workshops and work sessions. And something that we're excited about is reaching out to some of our colleagues, our teacher colleagues, who are really skilled in this area and in teaching students who are learning English and in some other areas that I'm going to jump into too. So we're going to be accessing some in-district people, and Matt talked about BOCES as well, and to help put some of these on as well. So we'll do some basics of co-teaching and inclusion, and we'll also be offering some a workshop for administrators around observing in the co-taught classroom, so you can really get a sense of what does that look like, and what does excellence look like in that co-taught classroom. We'll also take a look at literacy. You know, we've worked on and many teachers worked on the elementary literacy framework, which we've come to time and time again, I think over the past 3 years since we've been doing some of that work. And we're going to use that, and again, some literacy essentials in order to guide some elementary literacy work as well. So you'll see there are two there. There's one on the essentials of elementary literacy and one that's a little bit more advanced. Again, that's for classroom teachers, reading specialists, etc. And also mathematics, looking at differentiating and using models. And I should also say that along with literacy and mathematics, ensuring that those workshops are really tied into the curriculum work that Liddy talked about is going to be really key as well.
And then our other major initiative, our teaching and learning initiative surrounding the one-to-one rollout. We are planning a large catalog of things to support teachers in preparing for that next year. So to kick off the summer, we'll be collaborating with TST BOCES and SUNY Portland, actually to bring a group of national ed tech experts here to lead a mini Google Summit. We will be providing the facility. They will be paid for the people to lead the summit, which is a great opportunity for us. So that will kick off on the first Friday of summer, June 26th, with Google Summit. Besides that, what we have heard a lot from teachers is wanting time to really think deeply about what one-to-one means for teaching and learning in their classroom and facilitated time. So utilizing some of our expert teachers here in Ithaca, as well as Zach Lind and Mike Dingman, the two instructional technology specialists that we have from Cinevic, to facilitate sessions where there is some direct instruction around various Google tools and web tools that can support teaching and learning, but then providing teachers time to actually experiment with those tools and then do some instructional planning with kind of the experts there to guide and support. So there's like a whole listing of various tools for assessment, specific training on just Google Calendar, how might you use that in the classroom, or Google Docs. We'll also be providing opportunities for our primary teachers, so our pre-K through 3 teachers to come together in grade level sessions to think about iPads and how they're going to use the iPads that will be more available in their classrooms next year as we kind of transition from the iPads kind of spread throughout the district to bringing them to our primary classrooms and really thinking deeply about what are the types of applications that they want to use with students in their classroom. We will be working with we want to really provide some time for our teacher librarians to come together as a PLC to do some deep thinking about what is the role of the library in kind of the 21st century school setting, right? Because it is an integral, it is the center of the school, and kind of thinking through how they can really be leaders in this initiative and supporting not only students but their colleagues and teachers throughout the school. We'll be working directly with principals and administrators in the district to support them in thinking about what does this mean when you're observing in classrooms? What types of teaching and learning might you expect to see? What kind of look-fors might you have in the classroom? How does this connect to the Danielson rubric that we already use in teacher evaluation? And also providing some direct instruction to administrators around how they can leverage these technology tools to, in the professional development that they plan for teachers during faculty meetings and PLCs. And much of that will be through modeling and providing experiences with kind of a flipped professional development experience for administrators. And then another kind of final major is around digital citizenship. So as we are rolling out lots of devices to students, we need to make sure that we are putting in place systems so that students, teachers are being learning what they need to know to be safe, responsible citizens in the digital world. So we're working at developing a kind of mini curriculum, kind of just a baseline. Like, this is ongoing work. We know it will continue for years, but get us started. What is the baseline training you want every teacher to have? And creating a curriculum that can be delivered both in-person sessions and online so that teachers have choice in how they engage with that curriculum and so that we can get everybody to have that experience by the fall. And then also working with buildings about how they're rolling out the devices and what that kind of initial digital citizenship training will look like for students in each individual building.
Sean, go ahead. Yeah, question.
The acronym GAFE?
Google Apps for Education. And believe it or not, it's pronounced GAF.
Which I had to look up this afternoon. So
Did you Google it, Brad?
Did you Google it?
I Googled it.
Google Apps for Education. So that's the suite of applications.
Yeah, correct. And we're talking, and yes.
So you probably can't tell me how much state ed spent on changing ESL to ENL, right? I mean, did they take a vote or they just...
I do have to say that the changing of the name was a small part. They really have done a lot of work. I'm not sure who the specific they are. And they have produced some documents that are very supportive for both ENL teachers and classroom teachers in supporting students within those classrooms. So that has been a name change, but along with some very supportive documents to help us support students. So
More than just a name.
it's more than just a name.
Okay.
I have to say that they've done some really great work to support us.
Other questions? First blush, this seemingly is a far more robust summer schedule than we've been able to do the last 2 years.
Yeah. More than that, I'm looking at it myself, and it goes back almost 4 years. And we really did some really targeted, embedded PD around just teaching and learning strategies. And I believe you and Lee and the team of folks here kick-started that. And the summers after that, the 2 summers after that, we were a bit of a national model and attraction for folks to come hear the conversations, which we had the national event. So we had 1 year 400 and 1 year 500 folks come. It sounds the cycle is starting again. We're going back to the basics on our one-to-one implementation. 1, it will be probably the largest in New York State, and 2, it's unique in that it's a combination of blended approach with the iPad and the Chromebook, and we have 5 years worth of PD around good teaching and learning strategies before we even talk about the technology tool. So I think after going doing this embedded work this summer, if we choose to go that, we will be another, again, state national model for even more work next summer as we do this. But I'm excited about this. I can't wait to be in class like I was that first year with you and the team here, helping us understand what the levels of engagement and thinking were we wanted to get to in our classrooms. And now it sounds like what the level of thinking and engagement we're going to need to get to with the device in everyone's hand.
And also being fairly creative in how resources are spent, because we haven't dramatically increased the PD line, correct, in the budget. That's going to be voted on in a little bit. This would qualify for the next year's budget, I suppose, right? It's after this fiscal year. So, but being very creative for this summer anyway, and hopefully as we go forward. I state that, but it's a question, I guess, but we are doing that.
We're in the same line of thinking as you.
Okay, all right. Anything else? Any other questions?
No, I'm looking forward to it. We'll get invites to some of these things.
Oh, yes.
We'll have some of them. I don't want all of them.
We'll update the calendar as we go.
It's summer.
We'll give you dates and locations and times. You're welcome to any or all.
And we'll call you personally. For every single one.
Sean always appreciates that. So great. Anything else, Matt?
Yep.
Everyone?
Thank you.
Great.
We'll do teaching is
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Lots of clapping tonight. That's all good. Anything else?
I'll move adjournment.
Since we're
Looks like we're already adjourned.
the kids are adjourning us, so I think we're done.